know that the Herbert family, Mr. and Mrs. White, was very sad, and were very sad, and they knew that their son had died. But Mrs. Herbert could not believe, and Mrs. Herbert was ready to make the second wish to bring her son back. But Mr. White was extremely afraid, because he knew that Herbert Herbert's mutilated dead body would arrive before him, because he could not recognize Herbert also. So it was a rather pathetic thing for Mr. White to wish Herbert alive again, but Mrs. White was ready to accept everything. So before he could escape from the room, seized upon him. Means when he went downstairs to bring the paw, and he thought that he would be wishing for Herbert, and Herbert's deadly appearance of the good ghost would appear before him. He was very much afraid, and he caught his breath. Means he was holding his breath. His brow cold with sweat, he groped along the wall until he found himself in the small passage with the unwholesome thing in his hand. So his throat, his brow was cold. He was extremely afraid. He just groped. Means in the darkness, he was just touching the wall, and he was moving along the wall to find himself a small passage. To the small passage, he went to bring that unwholesome thing, this very bad thing, or the uncommon thing in his hand. Even his wife's face changed as he entered the room. So even when he entered the room with the paw, his wife's face's color also changed. It seemed to have an unnatural look upon it. So it seemed that she had an unnatural look. Of course, it should be unnatural, because she was going to wish for the dead son's return. So something unnatural was happening. He was afraid of her. Means seeing his wife also, he became very afraid. Wish, he cried in a strong voice. Now she cried, and she said him to wish loudly. It is a foolish and wicked, he faltered. He hesitated. He could not do it properly. He again and again told that it was a very foolish, stupid sort of thing, evil sort of thing. The wish, repeated his wife. Again he said to wish. He raised his hand. I wish my son alive again. So again he wished what? That he wished his son alive again. The talisman fell to the floor and he sank trembling into the chair as the old woman walked to the window and raised the blind. So the lucky charm fell on the floor. Again the wish would be fulfilled. And he sank trembling into the chair. He was trembling into the chair. He was trembling with fear. He sank on the chair as the old woman walked to the window. Old woman walked to the window, and then he raised the curtain. He sat until he was chilled with the cold. He sat there until he's chilled. Means he got cold. He had a very extreme cold feeling, chilly cold feeling. And then glancing occasionally, sometimes he was looking at the figure of the old woman, means that his wife, and peering through the window and looking toward the window, because he was very scared that Herbert would be appearing in a deadly appearance. So the candle end was throwing pulsating shadows on the ceiling. So the candle was about to be extinguished. That's why the blinking shadows was there on the wall of the ceiling and walls, until it, with a flicker, it expired. So suddenly it was put out. The old man, with an unspeakable sense of relief at the failure of the talisman, crept back to his bed. But he could understand that the wish was not fulfilled, because Herbert had not arrived. So he could understand that he had a great sense of relief that at least the wish was not fulfilled and Herbert had not come. So he just went back to his bed, and a minute or two afterward, the old woman came silently beside him. So a minute or two after some time, the old woman also came to lie beside him. They lay listening to the ticking of the clock. They stood there and they lay listening to the ticking of the clock. The darkness was oppressive. The darkness was very much troublesome for them. And after some time, he took the box of matches and, striking one, went downstairs for a campaign. So after some time, he took a box of matches. Then he went downstairs. Means he was feeling uncomfortable, rather uncomfortable. At the foot of the stairs, he paused to strike another match. So while going down at the foot of the stairs, he just paused, stopped there, another match, and at the same time moment, a knock scarcely audible. So at the same moment, he could hear a knock which was scarcely, means which could not be heard, sounded on the front door. The sound was heard. The matches fell from his hand. The matches which were there, they just fell from his hand. He stood motionless. Standing motionless, means he was not making any sound. His breath suspended until the knock was repeated. So his breath suspended means he was holding his breath and he could hear the knock. And then he turned and fled swiftly back to his room. So then he just ran and went swiftly fast to his room and closed the door behind him. And he just closed the door behind him. A third knock sounded through the house. Then he could hear the sound of the third knock. "What's that?" cried the old woman, starting up. "It's Hubbard, it's Hubbard." So she said, "What? What's that? It is that," said the old woman, starting up and starting saying, "That what's, it's Hubbard, it's Hubbard." The old woman was excited because she could understand that Herbert has come. She ran to the door, but her husband, catching her by the arm, held her tightly. But her husband did not want to go, allow her to go. He was catching hold of her. He did not allow her. "What are you going to do?" he whispered wisely. Means in a rough tone, he said that, "What are you going to do?" Means you would allow the ghost to come inside. He was so scared of his dead son. "It's my boy, it's Herbert." But the mother's emotion was different, and she pointed out that it was her boy, Herbert. She cried, struggling. When she was crying and she was struggling, "I forgot it. It was 2 miles away. Why are you holding me for? Let go. I must open the door." So cemetery was 2 miles away. So it would take time for Herbert to come. He knew, and she wanted her to go, and she said that she would open the door. "For God's sake, don't let it in," cried the old man, trembling. The old man was trembling with fear, and he said that he should not allow Herbert to come inside. "You are afraid of your own son," she cried, struggling. "Let me go, Herbert, I'm coming." Now, this lady said that you are afraid of your own son. Whether he had died or not, that is not the question. Whether he was ghost or not, that a question. It was your son only, and he was your son only, and you were afraid of that. Means the lady was having another emotion, and Mr. White was having another emotion. So there was, and she went out there was another knock. The old woman broke free and ran from the room. Her husband called after her as she hurried downstairs. So the old woman went out rapidly and ran, and her husband called her after as she hurried downstairs. He heard the chain rattle back and the bottom bolt drawn stiffly from the socket. So he could see that the chain was being opened, the sound of the chain, and the bolt and the lock was also opened, and it was coming from the socket. Then the old woman's voice, strained and panting. The old man's voice got strained and he was panting. "The bolt," she cried loudly. "Come down. I can't reach it." This is the bolt. You just see, "Come down. I can't reach the bolt." But her husband was on his hands and knees, groping wildly on the floor in search of the paw. But her husband was on his hands. What happened? He was groping on his knees, and he was just touching the ground wildly on the floor in search of the paw. If he could only find it before the thing outside got in. So he thought that he would do the third wish. Okay, before the thing or the ghost would enter, he would do the third wish. If he could only find it before the thing outside got in. Yet more knocks and reverberated throughout the house. Yet more knocks reverberated means echoed throughout the house. And he heard the scraping of a chair as his wife put it down in the passage against the door. As his wife could not open the bolt of the door, she just placed the chair. She would go up on the chair and she would open the door. He heard the creaking of the bolt as it came down slowly, and the same moment he found the monkey's paw. So he just imagine the scene. Means the lady was about to open the open the door. At that time, Mr. White got the paw and frantically breathed his third and last wish. And frantically means in a mad manner, he just breathed, means he just uttered his third and last wish, that the paw should take Herbert back. The knock ceased suddenly. So suddenly the knock stopped. He heard the chair drawn back and the door opened. He heard the chair was taken away and the door was opened. A long loud wail of disappointment and misery from his wife gave him courage to run down to her side. Means a long means when the wife cried out in disappointment, misery, means a very much pain, grief, because she expected she could see Herbert, but she could not see Herbert after opening the door. And at the same time, Mr. Herbert got the courage to go there and stand beside her, because he was expecting the deadly appearance of the ghost, and when he expressed the third wish, it had gone. So he was in a mood of relief. And then to the gate beyond. Then he went outside and he wanted to look outside whether the ghost had gone or not. The street lamp flickering opposite shone on a quiet and deserted road. The street lamp, which was a little bit blinking, the opposite, and it shone what? It shone that the road was very quiet, deserted. Means desolate, no one was there. So this is the mysterious end of the story of the monkey's paw. It is quite an interesting story, and the question remains in us that whether Hubbard has come really or not.